Do you miss football? Of course you do. Well, have no fear. The UFL, yes, the United Football League starts this week. We've got a professional football, and football is back, baby. Stay tuned for UFL Week 1 breakdowns and best bets. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus Bets. What is up, folks? I'm your host, the DGen Doc, and that is right. It is year 2 of the UFL. UFL is back. Football is back. It starts this week on Friday, this weekend, kickoff week. And look, folks, I was on here, about a week ago, a little over a week ago, previewing the UFL season, and some things have changed. There's been some cuts. There's been some head coaches leaving. It has been an eventful 2 weeks there, and there's been cuts, but there's been some surprise cuts. Guys like Andy Isabella from the Battlehawks, a wide receiver, Lynn Bowden. Guys, also some major injuries, Dawood Davis, Cameron Dantzler, some Memphis Showboats there. So there's been some cuts. And there's also been some head coaches leaving. That is right. This week, the week of kickoff, 2 head coaches have left, starting with the DC Defenders. Head coach Reggie Barlow, he left earlier to start the week. He is taking a head coaching job at Tennessee State University. And then you have Memphis head coach Ken Wisdenhunt. Sounds like his is more of a family emergency. He just left yesterday. That would be Tuesday there. So really this week of opening weekend, leaving their teams in a bit of a bind there. But hey, if you want to check out, get the season preview, I give out, break down each team, go through my power rankings here, a little bit of a sneak peek. If you haven't checked it out, go ahead and check out the UFL season preview episode that is still very relevant. Goes by team. I'm breaking down each team, talking about the new guys that are coming in, the losses, what my outlook for them, and then I give out my 2 favorite futures for the UFL 2025 season. Again, you got until Friday to get those in, so make sure you do. But this week, it's all about week 1, kickoff weekend. That is what we are going to be talking about on this episode. So, with the kickoff of a new season, just want to set a couple ground rules here. Look, if you weren't with me last season or weren't with me during the NFL, first things first, I will not give out a play that I do not put money on myself, right? So, not just giving out random picks, not just clicking buttons, right? The bits that I am giving out, I have already have my hard-earned money on, so I would not ask anyone to put their or advise anyone to put their hard-earned money on something that I'm not doing as well. Also, it is week 1 of a relatively new league. It's year 2 of UFL, so we have a little bit idea of kind of what to expect, but still, it's week 1. So you're going to want to practice some gamble responsibly, some unit management here. Do not, just like in NFL week 1, as I tell you, a lot of changes. So you do not want to blow your bankroll all in week 1. I know I'm excited as everybody else for the UFL kickoff weekend, but just make sure don't blow all the units right away. Those are the quick ground rules. Again, let's have some fun now. And, I think it's good to look back at week 1 of last season and kind of see what to expect a little bit, right? So let's go ahead. I'm pulling up. This was UFL week 1, 2024 matchups here. So, you can see the matchups. I just want to quickly note. So we're going to talk over unders, of course. The way this show is going to work is we are going to go game by game. I'm going to break down each game and then give out one bet for each game. And then at the end, I will do my best bets, my 2 favorite bets for the week, and then give out a nice little DGen play, a nice little plus money, something to get us to the bank a little bit, make that wall a little bit fatter. So, look, last year, average total points was 36, and average margin of victory was 9 points. We had basically 2 close games between, I would say St. Louis, Michigan was kind of one of the better games, 2 of the better teams. Memphis, Houston, although not a bad game, 2 really bad teams. And the other two were kind of blowouts, good team beating the bad team there. So our average margin victory is 9 there, obviously the two blowouts, and then 36 is the total number of points. And a lot of totals we becoming right around that total. So just wanted to take a quick peek back at last season's week one to kind of see what we can expect here for week one of 2025. But without further ado, let's get to breaking down some of these games. And we start with the first game on the slate. We have the St. Louis Battlehawks taking on the Houston Roughnecks this Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time in Houston, Texas. Kickoff weekend. Expect the Rock to be there. Expect the place to be rocking. Maybe not because Houston was pretty poor last year. Not a good squad at all. So we'll see what the fan turnout is. St. Louis does have a home edge, one of the only teams in the league, but this is in Houston, so not super relevant there. St. Louis was a 1-9 team last year, or excuse me, Houston was a 1-9 team last year. St. Louis was 7-3, and the runners up there in the XFL division. So here's where we start with this game. St. Louis is laying 6 on the road, -110, -275 on the money line, over under sitting at 37.5. Houston obviously catching 6 at home, and a +225 money line home dog there. So, I think one of the ways that this game, last time they played, St. Louis won 22-8 last season when they played. Now they only played one time because we're not in the same division, so they did not play twice here. So, when we talk about these two teams, a lot of uncertainty revolves around the quarterback room. For St. Louis, it's life after AJ McCarron. That is kind of what we're dealing with here, is how do these teams deal with some quarterback change, right? So AJ McCarron no longer part of the UFL in general, but no longer part of the St. Louis Battlehawks team. They're Manny Wilkins and Max Duggan. Obviously, Max Duggan, we all know from TCU, that national championship run. Championship game did not go quite his way, but had a stellar season there. And Manny Wilkins was the backup last season for the St. Louis Battlehawks. Looked like those two guys are vying for the QB1 spot. There's been some reports that Wilkins may get the start, but Duggan still was going to get a little bit of burn. We've got some question marks there. And then on the Houston side of the ball, their quarterbacks in Jarrett Garantano, and Reed Sennett both left as well. And they bring in quarterbacks Anthony Brown, Nolan Henderson, and Jalen McClendon. The guess right now is that Anthony Brown is going to get the start, but no depth charts have been released yet. Typically release them, 1 or 2 games before the game. So stay tuned for that. Another quick thing here, injury reports and depth charts, they're somewhat consistent with this league. So I'll be posting, the injury reports and the depth charts kind of. There should be links to those. So you want to make sure you follow me at the DGenDoc on X for the up-to-date, last-minute up-to-date things here. They have a couple injury reports out for this game. Nothing too crazy injury-wise really yet, so nothing I really want to worth spending any time, especially because we don't know their depth chart. So how do we know exactly who's going to be the starters and the key players, except going off of last year, essentially. So my favorite play for how I think this game is going to go down is actually going to be the under. Give me the under 37.5 here. Look, I do think that I think St. Louis is the better team. I do think that the Battlehawks are the better team. I do think they get the win, but it's the uncertainty of the quarterback rooms for both of these teams that is giving me pause as far as why I'm not ready to lay the 6 with St. Louis, and I'm kind of going for the under here. I'm not impressed by really either of these two quarterback rooms. Now, a little bit more optimism for St. Louis. They also have the better skill players. But Manny Wilkins is a guy who, in his 3 starts last year, he had only 100 pass yards per game and then 47 rush yards. So he likes to do his work on the ground, a little bit of ground and pound there. Where Houston comes in, last season they were the worst offense in the league, only averaging 16 points a game. And Anthony Brown, their projected starting quarterback, last time he played a professional football game was back in 2022, where he had 2 games played. He had 300 yards in those 2 games, 2 interceptions, and 5 sacks. So not the best performance. I understand we're talking NFL compared to UFL, but still, none of these quarterbacks really give me confidence right away that they're going to light up the scoreboard here. I think we can see a little bit of an ugly game here. I mean, look, last time they played 22-8, even though St. Louis put it on them, that still came in. The under came in pretty easily here. So I think we're getting a good number here at 37.5. So I'm getting most of these numbers right now from Bet365. I will also be looking at DraftKings numbers as well, because as anybody that knows anything about gambling, you want to make sure you shop around, right? We want to make sure we're getting the best of the line, best of the number here. So I will be mostly using Bet365 and DraftKings numbers because those are the ones most readily available and those ones I use. So look, for this first game, I am targeting the under 37.5. Again, as far as how do I expect this game to go, I do think St. Louis is going to be able to pull out the victory. I'm not confident it's going to be, a resounding victory like it was last season. I think that we could see a little bit of a defensive battle here. And I think the rushing games by both teams are going to be key here, going to be trying to establish the run. So we're going to be, getting some, bleeding some clock there in that direction. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the second game. And this is the game between the San Antonio Brahmas and the Arlington Renegades. So that is going to be the Saturday game here. Let's go ahead and pull up this graphic for you. All right, so we've got Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time in Arlington, Texas. We got the San Antonio Brahmas heading to the Arlington Renegades. San Antonio laying 3 at plus 100 there, minus 150 on the money line. And then Arlington, another home dog, plus 3, catching 3 points, minus 120, and plus 125 on the money line there. San Antonio was the XFL champion. XFL conference champion. They did lose in the UFL championship to Birmingham, so they were kind of the runner up the league there at 7-3. Arlington, very disappointing season, only 3-7. They had some pieces there. They had the leading passer in the league with Luis Perez. They had a nice passing offense, but the defense really let them down there. That's kind of the theme that I'm going to be following in this one. Over under, sitting at 38.5 on Bet365, but only 37 over on DraftKings. I highlight that. That's kind of one of the biggest differences here. There's another one that's a little bit of difference too. But yeah, so depending which way you want to go, if you're going to be attacking the total, obviously Bet365, if you're going for the under, you can get a little bit more of a buffer room. If you're going for the over, DraftKings is going to be the place where you want to place that wager. All right, so talking about this game here on Saturday. So they've got, 1 game Friday, 1 game Saturday, and then 2 games on Sunday. The Saturday game here, this should be a pretty good one. I do think that, last season Arlington seemed to have the pieces. They just couldn't put it together. San Antonio was kind of my darling team there. Really like them, and I really like them this season. I mean, look, they are bringing back some of their best players in wide receiver John Trey Kirkland, who I think is the best receiver in the league right now. Him and Akeem Butler, kind of 1A, 1B. He was on that LSU 21 championship team. He was second in receiving yards last year. They also bring back a nice dynamic running back duo in Anthony McFarland and John Lovett. 2 productive guys. McFarland unfortunately had some injury issues, but when they were together, they were a force. So I really like their offense there, and then their defense, man, especially that secondary and that linebacking core. They were really solid for them. So I think they're a pretty complete team. Where Arlington, on the other hand, they do have Luis Perez, they have Sal Canella, they have Tyler Vaughns, they have a very solid passing game that they can rely on. The issue last season was they did not have a running game. The offensive line had some issues, and their defense just was not good. So, this is a team that they scored on average 25 points per game, but they allowed, a little bit over 25 points per game. So they were kind of one of those teams they were a middling team because they could put up points, but they really couldn't stop anybody, right? And, when I look at this team, the one key addition on the defense is defensive end Chris Odom. He was the Defense Player of the Year for the USFL in 2022, and he was on the All UFL edge. He was All UFL defender last season for Houston. Not sure why Houston let him go. So that is a bit of an upgrade. But for me, I still have questions on the running game, and I still have questions on the Arlington Renegades secondary. So first play I'm going to do for this game, over 37, right? So over on DraftKings, 37. These two teams played each other 2 times last year. In week 5, it was a 25-15 San Antonio win. And then in week 8, it was a 15-20 San Antonio win as well. So San Antonio won both games, won by 5 and won by 10 points. Both these games would have so the first game would have hit the over, the second game would not have. If you average the scores is 37.5, so right around there. I think the difference here is that I trust the quarterback room a lot more with San Antonio this year. I think that they're returning a lot of good pieces, and I think the key difference to this team from this year to last year is the addition of Kellen Mond at quarterback. Kellen Mond, obviously Texas A&M, had a great collegiate career, was kind of just backup, had some preseason work, a little bit of spot work in the NFL, didn't really get a shot to shine, but he's a mobile guy who can do it with his legs and his arms. And I think that's going to be key here. Again, this is an Arlington defense that allowed, 25 points a game. I don't think they're going to be able to provide a ton of resistance. Now, on the other hand, as good as San Antonio's defense was, Luis Perez, Sal Cannella, Tyler Vaughns, Bob Stoops, I think that they can get this passing game. I think they can still get it going. I think they can put up points. Again, I don't think they're going to be able to rush the ball, and I think they're going to be a little bit one-dimensional. We'll see if that leads to some turnovers and some interceptions and things like that. The San Antonio secondary is some ball hawking dudes, but I do think this is two offenses that can put up points, and you've got an Arlington defense that is going to really struggle. I think this, Arlington is going to have to make it a shootout to make this a game. So give me the over 37 there. And then also give me San Antonio -3 at plus 100 on the road there, road favorites. They're just a more complete team in my eyes. They have two dynamic backs. They have, in my mind, the best receiver in the league and some good complementary pieces in Stevenson and Justin Smith there. They have an upgrade in the quarterback room. And that defense, that secondary and linebacking core especially, is really solid. We're on Arlington. Yes, I think they can put up some points with Luis Perez. I think, Sal Cannella, Tyler Vaughns, that passing offense I've talked about, it's going to be solid. But I think they're going to be one-dimensional, not able to run the ball. It's going to lead to some sacks, potentially some turnovers. And then really, I can't trust that secondary. They're going to have to prove it to me right now for Arlington and that defense. So give me San Antonio laying the 3, and then give me the over 37 in that game. All right, folks, we are halfway through the weekend slate, kickoff weekend, which means it's time to pay some bills. And I got to do that by telling you about what some of the great things we got going over at IDP Plus. Look, I've got a promo for you right now, 50% off any subscription at idpplus.com with the promo code IDP2025. That's right. Now is the time to get in. At IDP, we've got you covered on anything NFL and anything football, because I got you covered on UFL all season long. Also, look, you're going to want to make sure you subscribe to the Bets channel right now, the channel you're listening to. Again, going to be doing a video breakdown best bets every single week so we can cash together. And we're also going to be doing some shorts, but we'll be doing NFL. I know, we're going to be doing some injury. So my background is in the injury game. Yeah, I'm physical therapist by trade. I work with injuries every day. So that's kind of where I focus on. We'll be doing some NFL fantasy, buy or sells, talking Stephon Diggs this week. We got some other people doing some great things, free agency, Again, IDP fantasy, normal fantasy betting. We got it all. So make sure you check out the IDP Plus channels. And then finally, Fantasy Football Expo. One of the best parts about the offseason is the Fantasy Football Expo. Make sure you go to fantasyfootballexpo.com to get your tickets today. All right, folks, we are going to Sunday to talk about these last two games here, and then we'll do best bets and we'll get up on out of here. So the next game on the slate here, we've got the Michigan Panthers taking on the Memphis Showboats in Memphis Sunday at noon. Football Sundays are back, baby. We've got Michigan here. Michigan is laying 3.5 on the road, and Memphis is catching 3.5. Another home dog. You're going to find that being a very common theme this week. Look, this is a situation also where you're going to want to shop around depending on which team you're trying to back here, because DK has this at 4.5. So obviously, hey, if you want to back the Panthers, you're going to want to run over to Bet365. If you want to back the Showboats, go ahead and do that at DraftKings because you'll get yourself an extra point there. Over-under sitting at 38.5 here. So Michigan Panthers, USFL runners-up, 7-3 last season. A solid team overall. Memphis Showboats, anything but solid. 2-8, only beat Houston last year. A bit of a mess, a bit disorganized, awful offensive line. Let's see, they were worst pass offense, worst rush offense, worst total defense in the league. Very much a mess. Surprising that they still had a better record than Houston because that was the only team they beat. But that this team was a big mess last season. So let's talk about this season. Let's look forward really quickly. There are two matchups: Michigan 35, Memphis 18. Memphis 18, Michigan 24. So Michigan beat them by at least 6 points in both of the matchups. Really laying it on them in that first matchup there. So Michigan is 2-0 coming off of last season. Looking at this season, I'm expecting a bit of the same. My favorite play for this matchup is Michigan minus 3.5. Lay the 3.5 with Michigan. Michigan, is a team that has a great defense. They have, they're led by their key group up the middle. The defense is Braylon Speaks, the defensive player of the year for the entire USFL. He's coming off the edge. You've got middle linebacker Frank Ginda. He's holding down the middle. He's a tackling machine. And then you got Kai Nakua, one of the two Nakua brothers on this team on the back end, one of the best safeties in the league. So this is an awesome defense. And then you've got a offense that has some guys on the edge there. They've got Marcus Sims. They've got Mariner. They've got, Matt Colburn coming out of the backfield. They were a very good rushing offense last season. And in the quarterback room, Bryce Perkins, Danny Etling, especially if Perkins is, I'm hoping he can get the start here, but both him and Etling can use their legs there. I just think they're going to overpower this Memphis team. Memphis, not only were they one of the worst teams in the league last year, I think they had a downgrade at quarterback. I think Case Cookus was actually, one of the better quarterbacks when he was with the Philadelphia Stars in the old USFL. He showed he was a capable quarterback. And I think, their season was very bad, really not because of him. The offensive line was awful. Skill players didn't step up, and the defense was miserable. So I don't think, I actually think their room now with EJ Perry and Troy Williams. Looks like Troy Williams is kind of edging out for that QB1 spot. Both guys who have been bouncing around the spring leagues and not even been able to hold the starting position. I'm not sure either of these guys are starting quarterback caliber. And I think, honestly, their quarterback room downgraded. Also, two of their best players will not be playing. Wide receiver David Davis has not been medically cleared yet. And then Cameron Dancer, cornerback, former NFL high draft pick, he's on the IR. So he will not be playing. So I really I think it's hard to be optimistic. And then to top it all off, their head coach just left this week. Ken Wisenhunt, he was the offensive coordinator and the head coach. I mean, they were game playing all around it. Now the all offensive line coach is going to go ahead and be the interim head coach. They're going to have to figure out how to call plays and do all that. I think Michigan's going to be too much for them. So give me Michigan minus 3.5 there to take care of Memphis. All right, last game on the slate, and it is with the back-to-back champions of the spring football leagues here. The Birmingham Stallions are heading up to Washington, D.C. Sunday, 3 p.m., right after the first game to take on the D.C. Defenders there. Over-under sitting at 41.5. Birmingham is laying 7 on the road. D.C., the home dog, at plus 325. Birmingham minus 425 on the money line there. So obviously the biggest spread, the biggest total of the weekend here. And I mean, look, Birmingham has proven they're kind of on that dynasty status right now. They've won back-to-back spring championships. They're the defending UFL champions, right? And they bring back a lot of pieces. They brought back Alex Magoo, who was a backup in the NFL last year. He was on the team 2 years ago and won a championship. Matt Corral was kind of competing for a starting spot. Really, Adrian Martinez was the starter there. He's there. They have Case Cookis as the third option. Ricky Pearsall, CJ Marable, Deion Kane, Jay Sternberger, key guys for them these past several years. Are returning, defensive side of the ball. Carlos Davis to Zeno, the linebacker, picked up Gilmore's, relative there, Stephen Gilmore, coming out of Marshall. So, again, they just kind of look like a stacked team. We're huge. DC, DC 4-8 last year, or 4-6, excuse me. Birmingham 9-1. DC a bit of a middling team. Their head coach just left in Reggie Barlow this week. Quarterback is Jordan Teamu, kind of been a staple in the spring leagues. They do have some guys in Abram Smith there and Ty Scott. On the defensive side, this is where I think this team could make an improvement. They were really led by their defense 2 years ago when they were a better team. And they've got some guys up front now, and Davin Bellamy, Malik Fisher, coming off the edge there that can cause some problems. They've got DeAndre Baker, former, as a Giants fan, it pains me to say, but former first-round pick out of Georgia who played really well, made all UFL cornerback last year. He's back on defense. So, this game for me was the hardest game to pick, and it's a big number, right? Now, I thought I would be coming in and be ready to lay it with Birmingham. I do ultimately think Birmingham wins, but I think this could be an ugly game. When they played last season, it was Birmingham did win, but only 20-18, so only a 2-point victory there for them last season. And I'm really, the play I like the most is actually the under 41.5. It's, picking a little bit on the highest number on the board there. Again, I do think Birmingham wins. I just don't know if they're able to cover the 7 there. And I'm not laying minus 425 week 1 of a spring football league. It's just not happening. So, look, I think the defenses are going to be ahead of offenses. Again, Reggie Barlow left. Now they've got an interim head coach. They've got to figure out their coaching things on offense. But I do think they got some dudes on defense to keep it close, keep it a game. And I do ultimately think both these teams want to run the ball, right? CJ Marable and Ricky Pearson for Birmingham, two of the best running backs in the league. Both Magoo and Matt Corral can also scoot themselves. And then Abram Smith, when DC was good 2 years ago, they were led by their running backs. Teamu can also be a kind of mobile there. So I like for this game to be closer to, around both these teams in the teens, maybe, Birmingham in the low 20s there. But, Birmingham, they were the best, number 2 in total defense last season. They were returning a lot of those guys. I think that this could be a situation where it's probably going to be close to around that 40 mark, but I think 41.5 is just a little bit too much. So give me the under there. But again, this one is definitely the one I feel least confident in. This game, I can, part of me can see Birmingham just absolutely blowing them out. And then the other part of me can see DC figuring out a way, with their nice home crowd to get inside that number there and cover the 7. All right. So broke down the 4 games. Now it's the fun time. Now it's time to talk about my favorite bets, my best bets here for UFL week 1. You could probably tell it in my voice, but look, Michigan. I love Michigan laying 3.5 this week. Love Michigan this week. I think Memphis, they're vying for the worst spot in the league. Michigan, on the other hand, I got them as one of the top. I have them again returning to the playoffs. They've got a great defense. They can run the ball, and you've got a disorganized Memphis Showboats team that just lost their head coach this week. He was their head coach. He was their offensive coordinator. I think that's going to be a huge loss. I think they're going to look disorganized. Two of their best players in Dawood Davis, they're really wide receiver number one, and their best cornerback in Cameron Dancer, both not going to be out there. I think those make huge differences. So I love Michigan this week. The other play I really like, San Antonio and Arlington, over 37, over on DraftKings, minus 110 there. I think these are two offenses that can put up points. I think Kellen Mond is an improvement to that quarterback room for San Antonio. And ultimately, I think Arlington's defense is going to struggle to stop anything, so they'll have to keep pace. I like this to turn into a little bit of a shootout there. I like this to be somewhere in the 40s, so give me the over 37 there. And then my DGen play of the week, Michigan minus 9.5 at 2-1. Give me the alt spread. They played twice. They have the average margin of victory against the Showboats last year, 11.5. One of the games they would have covered, one of them they would have not. This 9.5 number, but I just think that Memphis is really in a tough spot with Wisenhunt leaving very unexpectedly, and two of their best players are not going to be able to play. And it's a game where I already think they're the worst team. I'm not confident in their quarterback room, and I'm a lot more confident that Bryce Perkins or Danny Etling can use their legs, hand the ball off, and play behind their defense and let Memphis to make mistakes, because that was what they were great at last year, and I think they're going to be right back into that this year. All right, folks, that is it for UFL Week 1. Like I said, every week going to be doing game breakdowns, giving out my favorite bets, and then recapping with the best bets. So we've got football. What a time to be alive. Again, if you enjoyed what you heard, go ahead and like and subscribe. Help us out on this channel. Tell a friend. Make sure you subscribe to all the 3 things we got going on at IDP Plus. Don't forget your Fantasy Football Expo tickets. And without further ado, this is the DGen Doc from IDP Plus Bets, signing off.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.